Greetings, my name is Blaze and welcome to my channel. If you've not been here before, I talk about thought, theory, and my interpretation when it comes to things that I'm interested in. So today's video is actually a video request response. And if you have requests, as always, feel free to leave them in the comments of any video that you like, or even in the community tab. So today's video request comes from Aekir of Iron, and I might be mispronouncing that, and I apologize if I am. So the first question, how to tell if a spirit or entity is trustworthy, or at least discuss all this Pleiadian, reptilian rabble floating about. So here's the thing when it comes to that. I don't know what the Pleiadian are, so I had to do some web foo here. And looking up some of the stuff on them, I'm not sure if I buy into their existence. So I want to be very clear on something. I don't judge people on my channel. I will judge you for actions you do, but not beliefs that you have. So even if I don't believe with something, I will do my best to treat it with respect. Pleiadians, apparently, according to a couple of these websites, are essentially aliens of light. They are beings, one website describes them as light-bodied humans residing in the fifth dimension. And they're ancestors to humans and creatures living on Earth. Now here's the thing. So what's light body? I want to explain that. That is actually a technique that we, as humans that are in the spirituality, will use. Light body exercises is about infusing yourself with energy and kind of establishing your astral vehicle, so to speak. So again, I understand some of you might be watching that. I don't know why you would be watching this if you're not into this kind of stuff. So that part, I agree with. That's fine. I believe in the magical, mystical, and spiritual. Obviously, that's why I'm doing videos like this. However, once you start talking about aliens and fifth dimensions and ancestors, I start asking questions like, how do we know? If they communicated with us, how do we know we can trust them? Which kind of gets back to the original question that Aekir of Iron had here. How do you know if these creatures and beings are trustworthy? And honestly, I'm going to leave the Pleiadians to the side because, like I said, I don't know much about them, and I just now looked at them. I have issue personally reconciling that they exist. I could be wrong, and I'm willing to acknowledge that. And again, I'm trying to treat this with respect, and I'm just making it clear where I'm coming from. Let's talk about general spirit and entity and include the Pleiadians inside of that larger group as a whole. I advise, and this is my opinion, this is my personal thoughts on it. That doesn't mean it's right or 100% accurate. I want to point that out as well. So I would advise that you treat any being, whether it has a physical body or not, the same way. How do you trust any animal, including humans? Humans are animals. How do you trust other human beings? How do you trust cats, dogs, or any creature or being? You follow your instincts. So yes, it is possible to get misled, and I think that's the key thing. There's no way that I know of that's 100% surefire for knowing if something is trustworthy. There is an inner sight, a kind of a know inside of us that kind of tells us and sends off alarm bells if something is extremely dangerous. The occasional con and lie that's going on, apparently Fang wants to be in this video. If I'm sitting in here, he constantly wants to come up. So Fang here wants to join in the video, and he wants to talk about why he's a trustworthy kitty. But I'm being serious. Trusting and understanding comes down to following your gut feeling, in my opinion. And I think you should treat it the same way. You should also treat communications like, what is the risks involved with any being out there, and whether or not you should build a trusting relationship with them when you just met them. Basically, how you develop a friendship with people you actually know in real life. How did you meet them? What sort of things are they asking of you or asking you to do? What sort of things are they offering to you? All of this I would take into account when I'm deciding if a spirit or entity is trustworthy. When it comes to beings that are not of the physical realm, the mind, the astral realm, the other realms, whatever the case may be, even the fifth dimension as we're talking about here, which, by the way, I don't know anything about the fifth dimension. I've heard of it, don't know anything about it. I feel like we are going to be able to trust our instincts a little bit better because we're not talking about a physical interaction. We're not talking about our instincts here on the physical plane. We're talking about this extra sensual perception, ESP type stuff of these other realms. So I think because they're vibrant beings, they're not necessarily cloaked, so to speak, by the physical body to hide their intentions. Like, we can train people to react and respond to our body language. So even though we might let off a spiritual vibration, we're also giving physical signs. I'm sure there's probably something we are doing as far as chemically speaking, whether it be through smell or something along the lines when we're in front of someone and in the same room with them. I think that's also why it's a little bit different when you're talking to someone online versus meeting them face to face. I think the feeling and sense of what they're about can be more prevalent face to face than it can through the phone or through the internet or something like that. So I feel like these beings, since they're nothing but vibrational energy, I think that vibrational energy can just as easily be read, and you should probably go off your instincts even further when it comes to spirits or entities. That's just my opinion. Again, up to you how you want to interpret that, but that's my thoughts there. Your next question was, if movie magic were how it really worked, what kind of magic would you favor? Honestly, that is just too broad of a term for me to answer. I thought about this a little bit, and I was trying to think about some of the old movies I grew up watching. So there's a lot of different movies that have magic in it, TV shows and whatnot. Now, you specifically said movie magic. And, I mean, there's cool stuff. Obviously, you have to mention, like, the Harry Potter movies. There's things like Willow. There's Lord of the Rings. There's all sorts of movies out there that have different types of magic in it. And you can go way old school back in the 80s, and they have some pretty wild stuff there as well. Practical magic is pretty close to real life, just overblown for theatrical purposes. So, I don't know. The Craft, there's another one. Like, there's so many movies out there, it's really hard. So if you're talking about which realm of movie magic would I be most interested in, there's too many movies for me to knock it down to one. If you're talking about if I could take magical practice that at least exists in one of the movies, what area would I focus on, like type of magic, it would be healing. Healing has always been my favorite type of magic, even in real life, talking about quantum vibrational healing, etheric touch, psychic healing, herbalism, all sorts of, and now herbalism starts getting into the physical realm and it's less of the mystical, but regardless, I like healing, always had. I liked the idea of healing on multiple levels. I did try to get into medicine. I actually went to school to become a medical assistant, and I just didn't like the way modern medicine worked. It focused too much on just the physical, and I feel like in order for us to fully heal, we need to establish all the planes of reality, just as a loose-fitting thing. That's why you go to a psychiatrist if you have mental problems and you need help upstairs in your mind. But I think there's more that you can do than just that. I think you can go to a guru or spiritual teacher for that type of mental healing as well. Spiritual healing, we would go to some sort of spiritual person, whether that be a priest or a rabbi or, again, another guru. So I think there's a spiritual level that you can get that interaction with as well. That's where I feel like today's modern New Age magic helps. You can help with that spiritual healing on that level. And then if you have a physical injury, if you have a broken bone or a cut or some sort of disease or illness or sickness, you're going to go to a doctor, hopefully, to get medicine of some form. Even if that's a DO, a doctor of osteopathy, who does more natural type of healings. He or she does more natural type of healings. You could even go to a nurse practitioner. So, like, likewise, you would not go to a spiritual guru if you needed to have a wound stitched. So if we go off of movie magic, the idea that there is magic in these movies that can heal on all of those planes of existence would be the type of magic I would prefer out of all the different types of magic out there. But again, there's just so many movies, so that's a really hard one to answer, and I'm sorry that's a bit of a cop-out for me. If you had never gone down the pagan old path, where do you think you would be now? I started researching some of this stuff, and that's what first introduced me to this, and I started reading a whole bunch of books, and I spent years studying that, and as I got older, I started feeling like, I don't know, it feels like some of this stuff is made up too. It feels the same as what I was doing through when I was raised Roman Catholic. It seemed very similar. It's kind of like people are telling you what to believe. So then I started asking myself, What is it that made these people so special? Why were they able to tap into their singular god or gods? How is it that they knew? And how do they have all these answers? And then it occurred to me that everybody's making everything up. It's about the raw experience that you're going through. And that's one reason why I don't like to use the term pagan for myself today. If anything, I might consider myself an eclectic, monistic, animistic polytheist, maybe. That would probably be the most accurate way of describing my current view on my personal path. But I feel like I eventually would have ended up here anyway, because I think I moved past other people dictating what should and should not be, and I decided to journey and experience myself. I'm more of a spiritual person now than anything else. So I think I would have eventually got there, especially with today's world, how the internet exists. I think I would have eventually stumbled across it, especially the fact because I've always liked magic, illusions and tricks. I've done tricks since I was a kid. So that eventually I think would have led me to books on magic. I think I eventually would have found it anyway. So I don't know. That's what I think on a whole. How do you think patronage works as far as deities go? The practice of gaining their favor throughout history, and do certain gods favor certain people over others? So the way I think about that is I feel like there is existence, and I think everything has a divine spark to it, including us. I think that's where creativity comes from. In Druidry, modern Druidry, because we don't know what the ancient Druids used to do, we call it Awen or Emos. This is divine inspiration. I think that any sort of creative force that we use, whether it be magical or spiritual or art and music, because I do think art and music are a form of magic. I really do. I think they're a manifestation of the mind and soul and creative forces. So I think when it comes to deities, I think they're inside of that. I think this divine spark is something we don't understand. And throughout history and civilization, humankind has tried to understand it. And I think that is where we get religion from. So when the monotheistic practices, which are pretty prevalent today, they will say God, or they will say Allah, or they will have all sorts of names for their singular deity. Then you have your polytheistic faiths that kind of have multiple names depending on which deity they're referring to or working with. And I think at the end of the day, they're all talking about the same thing. And many people might not agree with that or like that, but that's my personal thought and interpretation on it. So I feel like we are trying to tap into this divine force that's part of everything, this divine spark that is in us and permeates all things. If you want to paraphrase Star Wars, even though that's a fictional movie, I feel like we're trying to interpret what that is and give it names. So as far as gaining its favor, I think in the spiritual world, one of the lessons that is taught, like attracts like. That's why you want to surround yourself by people who have a similar path to your own, because you will be drawn to what you are doing. If you think on positive thoughts, if you think on good things, that'll be drawn to you. Likewise with negative. They tried to do this book called The Secret, and it's not a secret. It's something done in spirituality, as far as I know, for generations. I've only been alive in this life, in this incarnation. I've only been alive for so long, since the 80s. But yeah, this whole thing of The Secret is something that's been commonplace through many of these paths. So it's not the secret, it's a secret that's shared among spiritual practitioners, like attracts like when it's in the spiritual realm. So for that purpose, if you are getting into creativity and you have a deity that is associated with creativity, you gain its favor by being creative. It's just common sense. If you have a deity that is into blacksmithing and you get into blacksmithing, you are drawing that deity's favor through the act of living your life in accordance to what that particular deity's morals, laws, interests, and likes are. As far as favoring one over another, I don't know. Maybe that is why some of us are so freaking good at one talent or another. Whether we worship or work with or pray to that deity, as mentioned, I feel like that divine spark comes from the divine. That's basically, if you have like an athletic ability, if there is a deity associated with it, even if you don't acknowledge the deity directly, by being athletic, you are living a life, in my opinion, that honors that deity. And some of us have that special spark, that special natural raw talent. And I personally believe that is a divine talent. I know a lot of Christians or monotheists will have that type of thing too. They'll say you were blessed by God, it's God's gift. And I think they have something there. I do believe that divine, regardless of the name that you call it, is giving you an extra oomph to certain people. And I think everybody has some sort of oomph. They just need to find out what it is, that natural talent. You've been blessed by or gifted with something from whatever it is that's out there that inspires the raw talent and nature of life. So that's my personal thoughts. So as far as like gaining favor, like I said, just doing what it is that you're gifted with, using that ability or developing that ability. Because let's face it, there are certain skills like drawing and art. It is a learned skill. Through repetition, you get better. So yeah, using your gifts and respecting your gifts, I think that is how you draw favor from the divine. And I just have to say, this kind of feels like an interview. But you know what? It was fun. Hopefully this answers your questions. Thanks for watching. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.